Good afternoon. It's McCollum on Business, Thursday edition. Well, we're one day after the quarter rate cut here by the Fed yesterday. So lots of news out there as well as President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met early or late hours Phoenix time last night. We've got all of those tariff updates for you as well. But as we always start with the show here, right? I'm Stephen McCollum, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'll get you updated on those specific updates. Of course, stocks we're paying attention to, all the other local and national stories that you need to know around the business world. And let's not delay it at all. Let's get right into the Market Watch. Yeah, I told you yesterday some of those magnificent seven stocks were reporting, meaning Microsoft, Meta, Alphabet reported yesterday. Apple is today after the bell. Market is down today. Being the way it was phrased and the things I saw, Fox Business, CNBC, etc., they all use the same term. The S&P 500 is being dragged down by Meta and Microsoft here today as well. Investors are rotating out of tech, causing this big sell-off that you're seeing on your screen right now. Dow Jones, well, it's the one that's up, 186 points up here today. For the Dow Jones, as of right now, 47,785. The S&P 500 with Meta, Microsoft kind of leading this charge, 21 points down to 68.64. And then the NASDAQ tech stock sell-off here, well, that means the NASDAQ's down as well, 213 points right now, 23,744. The small cap index is not escaping this. It's down 10 points right now as well, 2483 for the Russell 2K. And then there's Bitcoin. Big drop by Bitcoin today, back down into the 107,000 range, 107,457 for Bitcoin here today. So a big drop off. It was trading in the 115,000 range yesterday. Look at that, 107 today for the cryptocurrency Bitcoin out there. Stocks that we are paying attention to right now. Well, let's look at those magnificent seven stocks. First off, we'll start with Alphabet here. The Google parent company, as you all know, up today 3.53%. Strong results for them. The revenue for Google Cloud and YouTube advertising kind of led the way here for Alphabet. Alphabet earned $3.10 per share. So $2.33 per share was what was expected. So big gain by Google based off of, and it was driven by that Google Cloud and YouTube advertising. Advertising driving a lot of this numbers here for Google. Then their revenue was $102.35 billion. The expectation for them was only $99.89 billion in the estimate side of things. Big news for Alphabet, blowing away their numbers up today, 3.58% here for Google, or Alphabet, here today. Then we got another story here with Meta Platforms. Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Oculus, all of that stuff. Well, they're down big today, 10.24% right now. They raised its capital expenditures outlook because they're going to invest more into artificial intelligence, even more than they've already said they're going to invest into artificial intelligence. They expect to spend now between $70 and $72 billion. Before, they expected to spend only, quote unquote, $66 to $72 billion. Is what they announced before. So raising that lower number up. The forecast overshadowed their better than expected earnings and revenue in the third quarter. The investors do not like the expenditures outlook being raised up here for the AI side of things. That's why they're down 10.19%. here today for Meta. And as you can see, 10% for Meta means $76 off of the top of the Meta stock here today. And then there's Microsoft also announcing yesterday, obviously software. They own the Xbox, a bunch of that stuff. Well, they're down today as well, 2.81% right now. Their finance chief, well, her name's Amy Hood. She says capital spending will accelerate this fiscal year. Microsoft posted better than expected results in its fiscal first quarter. And they said revenue from the Azure cloud business was up 40% for Microsoft, right? Alphabet, their Google cloud business through the roof. Along with that YouTube advertising, Microsoft, same thing, Azure cloud business of 40% for them. So the cloud business is dominating right now, but Microsoft's still down. Again, same problem as Meta, expanding, accelerating their capital expenditures and what they're planning on spending is kind of what the investors are focusing on for these big companies going into today after they announce. Now, Apple is reporting today after the bell, Nvidia's next week here. So, what does Apple do today is kind of something we'll have to look at. But these are the three stocks kind of rallying and driving the stock market in this sell mode here today. Later on, when we come back, big trouble here for Chipotle Mexican Grill. We'll talk about that stock. We'll talk about Sprouts Farmers Market, local company that's expanding out here across the country. And then we'll also look at Carvana, another local company based out of Tempe. We'll look at those stocks coming up when we get to the stock market again in the Market Watch here later on in the program. But as I said earlier, if you were up late last night, well, you probably saw the live and the updates here between the meeting between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. They did finish that 90-minute meeting last night, our time, daytime there in China, or in Malaysia where they met. And they came out of this meeting and they have formalized a trade and tariff truce now. Months and months of back and forth, tit for tat, right? Much of confusion between the two countries and what they're putting out there. Well, now that trade war has kind of been put aside between these two countries. So there's some anticipation coming out of this and expectations. The major meeting points here was the discussions on Trump's sky-high tariffs on China, but also China's, their sky-high tariffs back on export controls, their tariffs back on the United States, and specifically on the controls on those rare earth metals that China keeps scrunching down on over time. That was the gist of the 90-minute meeting. And afterwards, the U.S. and China agreed to a one-year truce. What they're trying to do is reduce escalating trade tensions that continues to happen here. And the escalation is on both sides, right? Those port fees that, both United States put on first, China retaliated, for instance. That's for the people, the vessels going in and out, and then you've got the export controls, you got the computer chip controls that the U.S. is doing. So that now has a one-year truce, at least in this negotiation point right now. President Xi there of China, he said China would stop export restrictions on those rare earth materials for 1 year also in that deal. According to President Trump, after the meeting, he got back on Air Force One, and he said the U.S. tariff on goods related to the production of fentanyl, well, that's going to drop from 20%. It's going to go down to 10%. And China has promised that they would work very hard to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. And it comes into the United States through other means, right? Mexico, etc. Now, Trump also said the overall tariffs on China is going to be lowered. It's going to be cut to 47%. It was at 57% before the meeting. And then Trump declared any concerns. Basically everything's settled here for the rare earths. And we saw that from President Xi as well. He announced that as well. So the rare earth concerns are considered settled by both sides at this point. The U.S. will mediate talks between Beijing and NVIDIA, specifically and the NVIDIA CEO, over China's use of restricted chips. And like I said, a lot of this. So basically all the ramping up here over the last 6, 8, 12 months between the two countries looks like it's at a halt right now as well. So Trump did say, though, on Air Force One that China would purchase more U.S. energy as part of a wider trade tariff truce. He hinted at an unspecified transaction coming the way, basically involving Alaskan oil and gas going to China because China buys a lot of Russian oil and gas out there. So those were hinted as well. And then the big news here, especially for farmers of U.S. soybeans, China's going to resume buying a large amount. President Trump said a tremendous amount of U.S. soybeans immediately here as well. So that Trump said that on Air Force One, and that kind of leads us into expansion here of that first story into the second one. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he went on Fox Business's Maria Bartholomew's Bartomaro, I can't say her name, I apologize. Here, and he said China has agreed to purchase millions of metric tons of the U.S. soybeans in the coming years. How much of it are they going to buy? Well, 12 million metric tons of the crop during this season alone. Now, Basent said he did indicate in that 12 million metric tons will be between now and he says probably January is the time frame that they'll be buying it. He did add that China could purchase at least 25 million metric tons of soybeans each year during the next 3 years. Remember, China completely cut out the U.S. soybean market, hurting farmers, and that was a big exporter of that we sent to China as well. Basent said that he thinks Trump's trip to Asia may ultimately yield $2 trillion worth of investments specifically into the U.S. And, it's not just, it's the whole Asia, right? He met with South Korea. They have a deal and a framework in place. Went to Japan, of course, Malaysia, and ultimately met with the president of China there. So over and all, right, a successful trip here for President Trump, especially if the China trade wars are kind of over here, at least for the next year, and soybeans are starting to be exported and everything like that. But one thing that was kind of expected that didn't happen between the U.S. Chinese presidents meeting up, yeah, no agreement on TikTok ownership and what's happening with TikTok. I'll say this before we get into the story. It's a big issue here for the America side on what's happening with TikTok. China doesn't care because it's still operating. Why would they care? If you shut down TikTok, China would then care because they'd lose a lot of revenue from that side. But until you do so, they don't care how fast it's going to move, right? Well, according to this, here's the quote for you here. China's Commerce Ministry came out and said after the presidents met, quote, China will work with the U.S. to properly resolve issues related to TikTok. That's their official statement there. They gave no details. They didn't give any progress or any progress that's been made toward ending this TikTok uncertainty there for TikTok. So I went and found some TikTok stats for everybody out there. I think we've had them on the program before, but we'll reiterate it here. 43% of U.S. adults under the age of 30, they say they regularly get their news from TikTok. That kind of scares me a little bit. That's higher than any other social media app. That's higher than YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. 43%, yes. And that's from a Pew Research Center report published back in September. We told you about here at McCollum on Business. And then that same Pew Research Center survey, it found that about 1/3 of Americans said they supported a TikTok ban. What's interesting about that 1/3? Back in March, 50% of people supported a TikTok ban back in 2023, March of 2023. Roughly 1/3 said they would oppose a TikTok ban. And a similar percentage said they just weren't sure. They're not up on it anymore. Those percentages are dropping here in terms of the rise and the call for TikTok to be banned. Among those who did say they supported banning TikTok, 8 in 10 cited concerns over users' data security being at risk, and that's the major factor that everybody's taken into on that decision if they do want TikTok banned. So no development on that side. And as I said before, the U.S. has an interest in TikTok being moved over. China doesn't care. As long as it operates, they're still making money. They're still getting the information they want. They're not in a hurry. That's kind of where I think we are on the TikTok side of things, but no development there between the two talks, other than the standard, we will work with you, et cetera, right? So that's your government updates. Government shutdown still ongoing. Government yesterday continues. The Senate continues to vote no on that clean resolution and open up the government. So it continues shut down. And we'll have a story on the SNAP benefits. That goes away coming up on Saturday. The U.S. government is saying SNAP benefits are not going to be funded for November. We're going to take that here to the Arizona side here later on in the program when we look at local stories. That's the newest threat, right? We already know air traffic controllers. We know the security people at the airport. We know other government people have been furloughed and aren't getting paychecks. a month into this shutdown. Now it's about to go to the SNAP side, right? Food and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see how this continues on, but we'll get into that on the local side of things. Interesting story here, right? We talk a lot about the autonomous driver systems. Everybody say, oh, they're safer. The computers are safer out there than human drivers are. We actually have some quantitative numbers here, and this is a new safety evaluation, and it shows that Kodiak driver. If you don't remember what that is, that's that autonomous system from Kodiak AI for the big 18-wheeler trucks, as you see on your screen there. Well, here's the interesting thing: is those who've been out autonomously driving. Well, they tied for the top safety score among more than 1,000 commercial fleets that are run by human drivers. They matched the top level here with no driver behind the wheel and all run by the computers. This evaluation, this survey came from Anato Inc. They're the creator of the visually enhanced risk assessment. That's the Vera score that kind of looks at these autonomous vehicles and how they drive and compare to the human side of things. This system uses AI to measure fleet safety, and it's on a scale of 1 to 100. The Kodiak driver, autonomous 18-wheelers, it earned a score of 98. It's a scale of 1 to 100, people. That's remarkable there at the 98. That result placed it beside the safest human fleets in NATO's global network. The findings obviously are just huge discussion here across the trucking industry, and it's obviously raising questions about the role of automation in freight transport moving forward. And don't forget, it never gets tired, unlike humans do, right? Fleets within NATO's safety technology, they average a score of 78. This came in at 98. That's the average score, 78. And those without the technology, well, it averages only 63 if it's just human drivers only. The Kodiak driver achieved the perfect scores of 100 in several categories. One, inattentive driving. It was perfect on not being inattentive. No phones for it to read, I guess. High risk driving and even traffic violations. Scored 100. Its lowest score was a 95. It came in, and it came in because it was an aggressive driver. Was the lowest score, 95. I want to know what aggressive driving is for that truck, right? The Veriscore combines over 20 vision-based AI variables into one clear safety rating. NATO found that every 10-point increase in Veriscore actually cuts collision risk by about 21%. So it tells you how many collision risks, how far collision risks get down if you're dragging in a score of 98 compared to the human level things. A near perfect score, like Kodiak did get, the 98 out of 100, well, that shows a strong improvement over typical human performance out there on the road. So we're seeing some quantitative numbers on how safe the autonomous driving is, at least in this system here with the 18-wheelers out there. Fascinating numbers here. And I think we all knew going into this, computers will be safer than humans will. Lots of reasons. You don't get tired. You don't get distracted as a computer, unlike humans do. Things to that effect. So I'm not surprised that it matches the highest number. I'm just surprised that where we are at right now with it is kind of shocking, especially with 18 wheelers out there. So good numbers there. And look, there's going to become a time where there's not going to be any truckers. It's just all going to be driverless trucks driving around this country here on our major highways and everything. And speaking of, going back to the Trump administration and everything, and we'll move some states into this as well, because, in the Biden administration, they had made some rules. They'd allow states to make some rules. And it's all around, the protecting consumers' credit reports around medical bad debt, right? Well, the Trump administration is now moving to overrule any state laws that have come out that may protect consumers' credit reports from that medical debt. They don't want that to happen, right? The CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, don't forget, that's basically defunct. It is open to a minimum level because of a judge out there. But the CFPB has drafted what's known as an interpretive rule related to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So it's interpreting the law in a way that says that the FCRA, they should preempt any state laws or regulations when it does come to how debt should be reported to the credit bureaus. And the credit bureaus, don't forget Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, I think. TransUnion is the last one there. The repeals the binary rules out there and regulations. Back then, they allowed states to implement their own credit reporting bans. More than a dozen states actually prohibit the reporting of medical debt on a consumer's credit report, and that's kind of being pushed to be overruled here. Medical debt is if it's not the biggest, it's one of the biggest and most disputed part of a consumer's credit report. Insurance payments are often take a long time to get through to get paid. And oftentimes, patients don't have the means, the money laying around to pay a medical bill if insurance is not covering a procedure that has already taken place. They're quick to put it on your credit report too because they don't want to mess around with it. Doctors, the three credit bureaus jointly announced back in 2023 that they're no longer going to actually track any medical debt below $500. And at that time, the Bureau said they would eliminate 70% of all medical debts reported on consumer credit reports. So a lot of these debt numbers were under that $500 threshold, 70% of them. Some states, though, have gone further than what the bureaus had done with that $500 limit. For instance, Delaware, some other ones, they passed laws where medical debts can actually no longer be reported to the credit bureaus at all. So now the Trump administration is kind of targeting that through the CFPB moving forward. So pay attention to your credit report here as well with that coming up on that medical debt. And when we come back here at McCollum on Business here on this Thursday, we keep it going. We're going to look at Chipotle, Sprouts Farmers Market, and Carvana. Look at those stocks coming up. Look at this sell-off that's happening today with the reporting of these large, magnificent seven companies and their upping their capital expenditures. We're waiting for Apple to report. We're waiting for more trade information to come out. Come on back, folks. It's McCollum on Business. And we're back here at McCollum on Business Thursday edition. Appreciate you joining us. Don't forget, this earlier today we had the main event where we had Coach Sheehan from Scottsdale Christian Academy, his weekly bird's eye view, normally on Wednesdays, and this week he was coming in on Thursday for us here. So we had that at the top of the show. Of course, they lost last week, their first loss of the season. Have a bye week this week going into the 2A high school playoffs before. And they'll find out who they play this weekend, next weekend at home. That was this morning. Check that out on the YouTube page. It's broken out in the interview section of the YouTube page. Of course, the whole show is posted there as well for free on demand. You can catch it on demand at Robat TV as well. And the free podcast systems out there, they are free there as well for you. However you want to watch it, it is there. And I talk a lot of the Cardinals and the ASU and the weekend coming up and the differences in coaching here for the rest of the show after Coach leaves us there. And then, of course, this show, as soon as we're done, up at Robat TV, up as well on the YouTube channel. And then Today, we got the look ahead show, our final look ahead show of the NASCAR season. Today will be posted around 1:30 or so here today. We look ahead to the championship four, the championship race this weekend, right here in Phoenix, well, over there in Avondale at Phoenix Raceway. Truck Series Friday night, Xfinity Series on Saturday night, Cup Series Sunday during the day. Who are we predicting to be the winners? Setting up the race over there here for that final championship four this weekend here in Phoenix. Our last championship race here for a while. It's moving to Miami Homestead next year, but we'll still have two races here in the Valley coming up. So the final look ahead show is today. And then, of course, weekend of racing. And then we'll have a look back show last week. Celebrate the champions of the races over there in Phoenix this weekend. That'll be posted later today as well. And then the Real Matrix every Wednesday at noon. New episode. Well, episode 6 hit not just Robat TV on its own channel, but also on the YouTube channel, free podcast system as well. Just like the Real Matrix. The Real Matrix. Search for the Real Matrix on the podcast system. You'll see it pop up. All your favorite podcast systems, you'll find that. Same thing with the Pit Stop, at the Pit Stop Talk on all your favorite podcast systems, if I remember what I was saying there. You can find that there as well, but everything available. The shows that we produce here is there on the free YouTube channel as well. So, folks, with all that being said, we appreciate you. Whatever shows you pay attention to, whatever shows you watch, we appreciate you joining us. And if you ever need to do a show, you want to do a show, monthly show, every couple months show, weekly show, daily show, weekend shows, we can help you out with that. We have it all set up for you. Come on and join us here. We are right downtown, easy to get to, and we'd love to work with you there and produce your stuff here as well. Get it out on the YouTube channel. Even if you want to do just a podcast of sound only, we have that for you and can work with you to get that set up like we did with the Real Matrix out there. So, hey, with all that being said, let's get into the Market Watch. Now, the big guys are out there, and this is just hitting the wire right now. Mortgage rates have jumped 20 basis points since the Fed's cut yesterday. We'll get into that here in just a minute. Literally just hit my computer screen right now. Well, the Magnificent Seven stocks are kind of tearing down the market today and dragging it down as like I said, Fox and CNBC are both using that term. Well, the Dow Jones right now, the only one up, 119 points up for it. The S&P 500's down 35 points. Nasdaq's down 253 points right now, and then the Russell 2K, that's down 15 points for the small cap index. And then there's Bitcoin, also down today, was trading in the 115,000 range just yesterday. 107,360 for Bitcoin here today, as that's just as volatile can get out there. And stocks we're paying attention to right now, well, Chipotle Mexican Grill, you know them, down huge today, 17.04%. Chipotle sales are lagging, and it's not even close to hitting the numbers. Chipotle cut its same-store sales forecast for the third straight quarter. Huge decline in foot traffic for Chipotle. Not for me and my family. We seem to be there just as much as before. We're doing our part. The company there, Chipotle, they expect fiscal 2025 same-store sales to weaken by a low single-digit percentage rate for Chipotle. Not the news that investors want to hear. That's why they're down 17.06% right now. Now let's talk about a couple local companies. Sprouts Farmers Market. Not a good day for it here on the stock market either. 25.61% down right now for Sprouts. If you don't know what they are, if you haven't been to a Sprouts here in the Valley specifically, there are other places as well, but they're a natural and organic grocery chain. Their third quarter same-store sales and revenue, well, it was very disappointing as well. So, and it didn't even come close to the estimated numbers people were expecting. Fourth quarter earnings per share and same-store sales guidance, well, they missed expectations as well. Sprouts Farmers Market having a bad day in the investor world as well with their stock, 25.70% down. Not just on missing their numbers, but also lowering and weakening their guidance numbers moving forward as well. And then another local company, Carvana, reported their numbers as well, based out of Tempe. You know, Carvana, the used car dealership on the web. Yeah, down 12.17% here today as well. They reported $263 million in net income for their third quarter. Well, they were expecting $309 million. That's over $40 million difference there between the two. The expectation to what they came in with. That's why they're down 12.21%. The quarterly revenue, though, was above the expectation level. So it was the revenue side or net income side of things that hurt Carvana here. So two local companies struggling, and here possibly your favorite fast restaurant there struggling as well with Chipotle coming up here. So Apple reports after the bell. We'll keep our eye on that. But before we get to the local stories, I told you this literally just hit the computer here. So I'm reading it as we are going here. But the average rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage, it's up 6.33% here today. 20 basis points is what it's up since the Fed cut that quarter point rate hike yesterday. Markets, as I told you yesterday, they'd already priced in that quarter point rate cut that the Fed did yesterday. It was the commentary from the Fed that has people spooked, if I can use that term here in Halloween season. No commitment to when future cuts are going to happen. No commitment of any of that stuff. Partly because government data is delayed right now with the government shutdown. So that is what's spooking the market out there. So ever since the Fed chairman announced the cut, after he held that press conference, that time frame, as I said, 30-year fixed mortgage is up 20 basis points to that 6.33% right now as I look at it on my screen. So here's the thing. The bond market, it already priced in. That's what Treasury yields is what the mortgages follow. They'd already priced in the cut, but they were expecting them to announce another rate cut expected on the horizon in December. Jerome Powell did not do that. And that's kind of what we're looking at here when everything's up. Before the price cut yesterday, mortgages rates were at 6.13%. That matched a low from September 16th at that time as well. September 16th was the last time the Fed announced the rate cut for the first time here this year as well. So last time they cut it, it stayed low and it went low. This time they cut it up 20 basis points right now as well. So yikes. As Jerome Powell answered questions in that news conference yesterday, it happened as we were going off of air was when that press conference was happening. Mortgage rates shot up 14 basis points while he was answering questions yesterday and right afterwards. It rose another 6 basis points earlier today, like I said, and right now it's at 6.33%. One day change there as well. So, pay attention if you're looking to buy a mortgage, looking to refinance. It's gone up here since then. That is an amazing thing to see out there. And with all that being said, let's get into our stories here. We get into some local stories out there, and this is kind of a political story, but it also affects businesses out there as well. Workers are hard to come by right now, and it might become harder to come by. Today is the final day for the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, and that program that they have that automatically extends the work authorization for those immigrants who meet renewal deadlines. So what this means is thousands of migrants here in Arizona by themselves. Forget about the country. Let's just talk Arizona here. This will leave them without that I-766 documents that they need to keep working here in the United States, or here in Arizona specifically. Like I said, let's keep it Arizona side. Now, last year, DHS said that without the automatic extension that is expiring, they said last year 800,000 workers nationwide could lose employment. So last year they decided to extend it. That's a nationwide number. You imagine that number is probably close to being the same now as that is obviously not being extended. That was with the Biden administration last year, but under this Trump administration, DHS says they're not going to extend it, mainly because they want to deter fraud from happening in the system. KJazz went out and they spoke to an immigration attorney. His name is Ray Ybarra Maldonado. And he said that, quote, it's a renewal. So you've already been vetted, you've already been investigated, you already had your fingerprints done. You've already been working at the company, that you're working at with that visa. He says long backlogs, well, they mean that migrants who actually meet the renewal deadlines, they could still go without documentation for up to 2 years, even though they're legal. But that's the backlog right now to getting that documentation back out. He went on to say, you submit your renewal application on time. There's a possible 2, 3, 4 year wait to get that renewal employment authorization document in your hand. And if you don't have it available, that means you're no longer permitted to work. The automatic extension was put into place to cover that gap and that time frame with that backlog happening. The rule, by the way, does not apply to people who do have permanent working status. It's the temporary ones out there. So this extension, take the politics side out of it because we're the business show. But this extension, we could lose some more quality workers here that are legally here, temporarily workers coming up. So something to keep an eye on here if your business relies on people in that, or you have people, that do rely on that specific visa form moving forward here. And then, the other thing around the government with this government shutdown, I told you earlier, right? SNAP benefits end here coming up on November 1st because of the government shutdown. Well, KJazz went out there and started looking around here. I've heard rumors of people saying we should go raid Walmart, if SNAP benefits aren't good. We can go steal it from Walmart, etc. Well, the other thing that's happening, and KJazz gives us this story, and they do great reporting on these types of things. They went and they looked here, right? About 3 blocks away and leading up to St. Mary's Food Bank over there in West Phoenix. Well, they say traffic has gotten longer. It's slower to get up there to get the food that you need. St. Mary's Food Bank said they're 100 cars deep, 3 lanes wide, and they're actually backing up onto Thomas Road here with the lines to get into St. Mary's. Their spokesperson, Jerry Brown, brought that up here in this KJazz story. So this was Tuesday morning that the lines are that long. They said normally we don't see that except for during holiday distributions. So what's happening here? Well, hundreds of cars slowly are going through this line, right? Volunteers load their trucks and boxes with produce, pastry samples, and even soda, things that are donated and to these food banks. St. Mary's is the state's oldest and largest food bank also. The waits have been getting longer for a few years now. Inflation's a big issue. Cost of living is stretching family budgets thinner and thinner at these deals. Now, this is just St. Mary's. There's a ton of other food banks out there. KJazz focused on St. Mary's, but the other ones also are reportedly having the same issues, longer lines and longer lines over the years, but especially now with this coming up. St. Mary's has seen about a 10% year-over-year increase in demand for the past 4 years. They said they've seen a huge jump in the number of seniors going to the food banks, and that's because fixed incomes here for seniors, right? Inflation has jumped 9 or 10%, while seniors' paychecks with that fixed income, well, they've stayed the same and not gotten that big increase as inflation has gone up. But, just in the last few days, the line is getting longer and longer. So yesterday was 100, and I'm sure leading into Saturday, just going to keep getting more and more out there. We've told you all the time, food stamps are about to run out. And I wanted to know how many Arizonans actually have that. And they say hundreds of thousands of Arizonans are on those benefits, right? And all because of the federal shutdown here, going toward the 1 month mark here this weekend. They're saying they're not going to fund that SNAP, right? And the SNAP is simply the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So they shortened it there. So, yeah. So that's bringing more first-time visitors into St. Mary's and these other food banks to make sure that they have food on their tables after this weekend. So, they say hundreds of thousands of people in Arizona qualify for food stamps and this type of stuff. The number I found through research here is 887,000 people in Arizona alone rely on SNAP for monthly food assistance. The average money that people get is about $180 per person per month for people that qualify for it. So we're not talking a few people here, folks. We're talking a lot of people, and you probably know somebody that is on this assistance as well. Of course, Governor Katie Hobbs has said that without federal payments, there's not enough money in the state budget to keep the program going. Not even for a few days this year, or this coming up in November. There's no funding according to Katie Hobbs. And then don't forget, Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays is suing the Trump administration, along with a bunch of other states. I think it's 13 or 14 states. And they're claiming that the USDA does not, or does have a contingency fund of more than $5 billion dollars that they could tap into to keep SNAP running during the shutdown. So they're suing on that. No update on that as I looked earlier today. So, the food bank. So even if you can afford food and things to that effect, and you want to give to these food banks and donate to them and help them out, that's probably something you would be wildly accepted right now with the food banks out there, with the issues happening here around our country right now. And now let's move on to something a little bit happier out there, right? Lucid, that electric vehicle company that builds some cars here in Arizona, well, they expect to launch what they're calling a mind off driving, and that's which a car can basically drive itself under normal circumstances without a human needing to monitor it or intervene unless there's a change in circumstances. We had this conversation the other day about, General Motors wanting to move into this as well, and Tesla obviously does it. Waymo obviously doing it as well, and other car companies moving into that side. So basically, things like severe weather can make you have to take the wheel, but otherwise, it just constantly keeps going. Um, so basically, what they're saying is you can do other things while your car is driving you, is what Lucid is planning on bringing out with. Lucid came out and said this all on Tuesday, and they say they plan to leverage NVIDIA's Drive AV platform and multi-sensor suite that includes cameras, radar, and LiDAR, and they're going to want to use that system here. And that system allows the vehicle to better see its surroundings with all of those unifications. And they want to use that system there for what they're planning on doing. The plan is to debut the new system, they say, in the coming years. And they did say, they didn't specify when, but they did say that it will not work and it will not be available in 2026. So after next year. The system is first planned for Lucid's upcoming midsize vehicle, and then it would expand out to other models out there. In the current car models, they plan to have a lesser version of it to test it out, but not the full version until it gets into that new model eventually out there. And I'm going to use you want to travel someplace, and I'm going to use a slogan that another airline uses. You want to get away. Well, don't go to Southwest if you want to go to New Orleans next Mardi Gras. Yeah, Frontier. They revealed plans yesterday for a limited time New Year's route in February for Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport and 11 other U.S. flight hubs. So they're expanding this everywhere. It's going to be service between Phoenix and New Orleans International Airport, which is the Louis Armstrong International Airport. It'll operate 3 times a week from February 12th to February 22nd. Limited, right? For Mardi Gras specifically. The big day for Mardi Gras next year, actually, because Mardi Gras starts in January, but the big day is February 17th next year. So that's why it's covering that. Frequency and times, we don't quite know about yet. They're kind of putting that together as well. So Frontier Airlines, who's struggling, well, they noticed an opportunity to go into one specific place where a lot of people travel to. So they want to take advantage of that coming up. So Mardi Gras plans next year. You're looking to do Mardi Gras plans next year. Hey, Frontier might be the airline for you coming up. And folks, appreciate you joining me here today on this Thursday edition of McCollum on Business. Well, we got the pit stop coming up still today on demand. Look for that. We'll get this uploaded to the free YouTube page, get it posted at Robat TV as well. Appreciate you joining us. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday. Oh, yes. Get you ready for the weekend on the business side of things. Come and join me, would you? See you Friday, everybody.